You remember Slim Clinton?
Yeah, oh yeah.
One time, Slim and I and several others was in California and was going to aircraft school out there in North America. And we was in there at Patmar's, and it's kind of an eating place on the corner, kind of a nice place, you know, sit outdoors. Well, we all just took off and left Slim. Slim was talking to somebody, and he didn't pay attention. We told him, well, he'd pay for it, see. And he didn't have any money with him. He left his billfold at the motel.
I can tell you that old George Pittman, he was really mad.
Yeah.
But, and he come right in there and cussed me out.
Yeah.
And he said, you and, what was his first name?
I don't know.
What, did Rude's have a hide company there down there first, there on South 2nd? They're on the east side, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought they did. That's a long time ago, too.
Yeah.
Ready? Okay. This is May 9th, 1985. My name is Joe Todd, and this interview with Mr. Ben Blansit.
Ben A. Blansit.
Ben A. Blansit.
Another Ben Blansit in there.
Now, who is he?
My son.
Your son. So, where were you born?
Palo Pinto County, Texas. Gordon, Texas. A little town.
And when's your birthday?
October the 5th, 1889.
Who was your father?
James P. Blansit. James Preston Blansit. They did, I believe.
And your mother?
Ella Blansit. She got another but in there, but I can't remember her middle name.
Were your folks both from Texas?
My mother was born in Mississippi, and my father was born in Texas.
Did you know your grandparents?
Yeah, the Blansits was from Arkansas. Their little town named Blansit.
I'm sure of that.
Tell us about your grandparents.
Oh, my grandparents.
Yeah.
They were originally from Arkansas, and they were in the Civil War.
Is that your grandfather Blansit?
Captain in the Civil War. And then I've been told now, and I guess it's so, that my grandfather on the mother's, that's the on the Northman. Dad, my mother's folks, they come from Mississippi. But this Daly was, he was killed at Battle of Shiloh. And I ain't never verified that because, but I'm going to if I live. Because it's they said there's in the monument, you know, in that cemetery.
Did you know your grandfather Blansit?
No, I don't. They died Blansit, he died just before I was born.
Ever hear any stories about what they did in the Civil War?
Oh, Yeah, I've heard him tell stories about, one of them telling about, they had time eating, even corn, they'd get a corn, they'd go through the field, and eat parts of corn, I heard him tell that, and and then one of my uncles, they was telling a story about, they had a carload of hams at Vicksburg. It got them in there and they had a guard up there, gardening. And he tells this, and I guess it's so, man, do nearly anything in them days. And he slipped up there and he got 2 of them hams, one under each arm, he said. And he run by his commanding officer, he throwed one of them in there to him, and kept going, Nobody called him.
Now, was he on the north or south?
It's on the, they were all on the south.
On the south?
Yeah, when they had one that was on the north, they disowned me. Now listen, they were in earnest about it. I had my mother's brother. She had 3 of them that was in the Civil War. One of them named Ben, saying and they 2 of them got over it pretty well, but one of them never did get over the Civil War. When a Yankee come in, why, he shut up. He just didn't talk. And I didn't know that was what was the matter with him, and my dad told me. Yeah.
When did your folks move to Texas?
Moved to Texas. They come down there. My dad's grandmother, Daly, was their name, and I can tell a wild story about one of them that Dad told me about, and he was this his grandma, Daly. She was, of course, driving a wagon, and they stopped at a place to stay all night. And let's see, I don't want to get it wrong now, and they told the man they wanted to stay all night. They had 2 or 3 little kids. His grandmother did. His grandmother. And the man said, well, they didn't have no room, and they finally said, well, I've got these kids, and I've got to have someplace to stay all night. And they was when they finally they consented for them to come in, and they were scrubbing the floor, and they had but my grandmother said he heard something under the floor, somebody groaning, Now these things had happened, and what they had done, they had killed, thought that they had this man killed, And he wasn't. He come, you know, he was just stunned him. And my grandmother sat up there, she smoked a clay pipe. And sat there all night, never went to bed. She got up, hitched up her team and went to the first town and notified the authorities. And they went back there and they arrested these people.
What year was that?
Oh, that was just a little bit after the Civil War, probably, the first year or two. And I'm sure, Nellie, that that's a true story.
Did your mother ever tell you about what the home front was like during the Civil War? What life at home was like?
Oh, they told us, yeah, they used to tell us they'd stand out there when the soldiers marched by and they'd cook them bread, you know, and hand them bread out. Because them and my aunt Kitty, they called her, she was I wouldn't know. She must have been about 25 years old when the Civil War come in, started. And her husband, you see, he is in there. There was three of them Harringtons, and they were all three in the Army. One of them got wounded.
Did your folks say why they moved to Texas?
Yes, if you want me to tell you why.
Yes, sir.
There's too damn many Yankees up there. Come into Mississippi. They call them carpetbaggers. That's the reason they left. And they didn't mind telling you. Too damn many Yankees.
What part of Texas did your folks settle in?
They settled down in, the Palo Pinto County is where they originally came to, and one of them never did leave Texas. He went down around Waco.
What part is Palo Pinto County? What part of Texas is that?
That's, then they called it West Texas, but now it's just about, I'd say from Lawton, Oklahoma, it's about straight south. And it's about, I don't know how many miles, but it's just about straight west of Fort Worth.
Were your folks farmers?
Farmers, well, my dad was a railroader, part of the time. Couldn't make a living farming.
What did you do for the railroad?
Oh, he was a section foreman, a brakeman.
Which railroad did he work for?
Well, a bunch of them. He helped build the TP railroad. And that runs from Fort Worth to El Paso. And he worked on the Mexican Central. It is in Mexico. And the Mexicans run them out. But, well, they just got up and walked out, you know. They was helping build out Mexican Central. And they was, I can tell you from the stories he told, it was really rough.
What stories did he tell you?
Well, he didn't own this. I did have the picture, but I ain't got it no more. I had a man hung to every, you look down the railroad, and the arm on there, a man hung on every one of them. Pretty rough when it's that way.
Who hung them?
They just, like old Villa and them people.
Oh, Pancho Villa?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They were, what they were doing, they were fighting for their liberty, they claimed. And then people liked him. And he, pretty mean, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, history tells you he was.
Did you ever hear any stories about the Texas Revolution? You know, the Alamo?
Oh yeah, I've heard all kinds of stories. Mostly what I've heard the old timers tell it, and I used to listen to it.
What stories did they tell you?
Well, it told me about, I don't tell too many of these stories because people don't believe them. They told, they marked a line there in Alamo, and I've been there and seen where they said they draw a line there, draw the line there. This Travis said, and he said, anybody that crosses that line, why, we want him to stay. And fight, you know. And if anybody wants to go on that, stay on the other side and leave, get out of here, move out. And they tell you about one guy, I forget his name. Probably history would tell you. And he said he was on a cot and he was sick. And he had him carry him across. And even now, and she was my wife, you take your hat off. And I mean, you had some mean people, and you had some people that killed people, you know, like Boy, and they talked quite a bit about them that died at the Alamo.
Ever meet anyone that fought at the Battle of San Jacinto?
Well, I know where it is, but I just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say. I know where it is, and I know I had a fight there.
How long did you live in Texas?
Well, I left Texas when I was about, we first left Texas. We come to the opening of the Cheyenne-Arapaho. We call it Cheyenne country. And that opened a year before this did. This opened in when, 93?
93.
Well, that Cheyenne opened in 92. They call that the Cheyenne country down there. And Dad made a run in there, and then he went to railroading again and sold the farm.
Did your father talk about the day of the run? Making the run?
I heard them talking about it, yeah.
What'd they say about the run?
Well, Well, that Cheyenne is the one that I heard more talk about, because they, you know, about half of them didn't stay very long, you know, just too rough. You didn't have nothing but a vast prairie there, and yeah, I don't know how we live. Hardly they killed deer, turkey. There's quite a few turkeys.
Did your father make the run on horseback or by wagon?
He had a couple of ponies. One of them was given to him, I think. His uncle gave him. That was his team. They were ponies. They wasn't big horses. And he had a wagon, covered wagon, and we come across that Kiowa country out of Texas, across the Red River. Now I must have been awful young, but I can remember my mother crying when we went in the river, you see. A lot of times they get stuck in quicksand, and you could see wagons there they'd abandoned. And it's pretty rough to get across the river. But
did you have any trouble crossing?
well, I don't remember exactly. Only I do know that I didn't know whether we was going to make it. You know, that's about the way I felt about it. I was just a very little kid.
Do you remember the rest of the trip?
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember just about all the rest of it. That is, just like we went to the. I'd never seen mountains like that. Of course, Palo Pinto County is all mountain area where we were born. Then over there in the Kiowa and Comanche, that's about south of where Mountain View is. You know where that is down there? It's about straight south. And we come through Fort Sill. Wasn't no Lawton there. There wasn't but one town down there that they had old man Sneed, later becomes Secretary of State. He had a store down there called the Red Store, right close to Fort Sill.
What was his first name? Was that R.A. Sneed?
Huh?
Was that R.A. Sneed?
Yeah, I guess it was.
He was an old Confederate soldier, wasn't he?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And he was he was Secretary of State for quite a while. And
anything else happened on the trip in particular besides fording the Red River?
well, I've seen them. My uncle. He was never married. He was a single fellow. He was my mother's brother, young fella. And he had a cap and ball pistol and a rifle. And they'd set up at night, and Dad had I can remember Dad had a double barrel shotgun loaded with buckshot. Remember they? And of course, you see, you had to have a crossing across them creeks and things, and them Indians said charge you $1 to cross there. And them people didn't have $1 a lot of the time, and they crossed anyway. And they got them them Indians know that they'd get killed if they didn't. Because by that time there was 5 or 6 wagons that had got together, you know, and they was all ready for them. And of course, Big Tree, that was the chief. I've seen him several times afterward, and I don't like to tell this because my wife, when I go to tell this, she gets mad. And I'll make her get back in, because old Big Tree, the story was, and did he taking this baby away from the woman, throwed it up and caught it on a butcher knife. That's Big Tree, the chief of the Kiowas. Now that was the story told. Whether it's so or not, I don't know. But that's what we was facing. That kind of hostile people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's,
What tribe was Big Tree?
he was a Kiowa.
Kiowa?
And there's another far cutting Big Tree. Now this story tells about him. I don't know if it's ever published. I never heard of it. But he asked this old boy he couldn't cross unless he give him $1. And he run his hand in the pocket, this old boy did, pulled out a knife, and cut him across here, and cut his thumb across his belly there. And now I guess people was pretty tough, and that old Big Tree went to his teepee, holding his intestine, you know. Now those are stories that some of them was evidently true.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's what we had to face. And you know, pretty rough.
Do you remember what you packed in the wagon to bring with you?
We had a ground stove. You know, I can remember that. It's round, you see, like a stove like this. And you put a pipe on it, just like any, so the smoke would come out. And but it didn't have no bottom on it, you see. You set it down on the ground. You can make a good fire in it. And we had a tent, you know.
Did you use a wagon sheet for a tent?
Well, we had a tent,
Mm-hmm.
you see, and some of them did. And what we done, we had used, put the kids, most of them in a wagon. That's where we kids slept.
What brand of wagon was it?
I think it was what you'd call a Lake City.
Lake City? Who made the best wagon?
Studebaker.
Studebaker?
That's the kind Dad bought when he bought a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Studebaker.
How much did a new wagon cost?
Oh, now. Now this is kind of got me puzzled just what to say and how much it cost. But they didn't cost like you do now. Because I'll say that a good brand new wagon Studebaker would cost about $25.
Did that include the wagon sheet?
Huh?
Did that include the wagon sheet?
No, you'd have to buy that bowls. They got what they call bowls.
Mm-hmm.
Put in steeples on each side and put.
What did you have to buy to go with the wagon? Did that include the tongue, the double trees, and everything?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. It included the tongue. Well, it included everything. You know, not the harness or anything like that, but it included all the double trees, single trees.
What wood makes the best wagon bed?
What would make the best wagon bed?
Yeah, what type of wood?
You must have been there because it was Bodark.
Bodark.
Man have a Bodark wagon, you know, anyway. I don't know how they do it, but that was one of the things. Really.
Now, when you're using the wagon, what maintenance do you have to pull to keep the wagon going? What maintenance?
Oh, you mean that?
Yeah, upkeep on the wagon. What do you have to do?
Oh, yeah. Well, you've got, in the first place, you got to get your box axle grease. And you have to grease the spindle, take the nut off with it, and pull the wagon and put the spindle, put axle grease on and back on. And
how do you take that nut off?
You got a wrench. That's it. It's hold that double tree in. It's got a thing that will take him off. You see. And
what else would you have to do?
well, let's see, what else? Well, you had to. There was not very much upkeep to a wagon now. Of course, after you'd taken a long trip, it was there was two kinds of wagon. It had the narrow gauge and the wide tread, and it was pretty bad for you eat one of them to, you know, because they had to make two tracks, you see. Wide tread would be over, I don't know, must have been 6 or 8 inches. And finally they got to making them all the same. But they had them, when they was coming to this new country, they were having, you know, they were, everything like that was, you know, different guys made different wagon companies or whatever, like Studebaker, Lake City, or the Bain, and all them. They made their kind of wagon, and they didn't pay no attention to what the other guys making, and they didn't have them all the same tread, and that was bad. You take a load, heavy load, and you'd have to make your own tracks maybe. One side, you know, you could run one side, this one over here, but this wouldn't fit over on the other side, you know, and you'd have to make your own track.
What about the tires?
Well, now, that's another thing. That's where you got your board arc again on your spokes and your filler of it around there, and your tires, your steel tires or iron tires, and your a blacksmith, he could put them on. He had a machine, some old kind of a thing. I just can't remember just what it was, but that would shrink the tire. And they could, you know, now they didn't have nothing to hold this tire on. They just, they was just pressed on there, or pushed on there, take a hammer and knock them on. And lots of times they'd have wedges, you know, and drive in between the iron tire. And another thing, they drive in the water a lot of times, you know, and that'd the tire coming off.
That swells the wood and
Yeah,
keeps the tire tight?
that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way you live. Yeah, that's the way you lived. And you of course, is the progress up to now is so much different.
Mm-hmm. Did you prefer horses or mules on the wagon?
Oh well, now the mules can stand more than horses, but they're meaner. They'll kick you if you don't want, and I mean they'll kick you. Always hate to put a trace chain, you know, to your single tree. You know what a single tree is?
Yes, sir.
Well, you're liable to get kicked.
Go ahead and talk to Harry for a minute.
Do you remember what kind of axle grease that you used?
Yeah.
I'm sure you do.
Golden, they call it,
Remember Black Beauty?
yeah, they had that Black Beauty and they had the golden that was, you know, it's two colors. The top of it was yellow and the other is just ordinary grease, brown or whatever it is. Yeah, there's Black Beauty and that's the two that I can remember. And the other is golden something.
Did you ever have a coupling pole break when you were driving the wagon? And the back and the front wheels come apart?
Yeah. Yeah, and if you lose that pin in there, you see, you
Slide out, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
The rear wheel and
yeah,
pull the front wheel out from under.
that's right.
Yeah.
What you do, you can, you got your two wagons and your back end of the wagon and the front end, you got the tongue and everything. You can see a lot of people driving this with two wheel, the front end of a wagon.
Right. That's right. When you were harnessing your horses and mules, did you ever have them kick you very many times when you're doing that?
Well, I was always afraid of them. I knowed of them kicking people. And them mules, you know, they used to say a mule never forget you. If you ever give him a whooping, he'll never forget you.
Yeah.
And you better watch him. And I think that's right. I think that's just...
A mule was a pretty smart animal, though, weren't they?
Darn right he was, and he could act as dumb as too.
I know.
But he could pull. When he had to, he could pull.
They actually, and when they got too tired, they knew when to quit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You couldn't you can't work a mule down till he goes down. You can a horse. You can work him till he can't pull nothing. Just give up. But Mr. Mule, he quit before he'll just quit.
Yeah. I always thought that a mule had a lot of sense.
Yeah.
He knew when to.
He has got a lot of sense.
Horse too will go back if a barn was burning or something like that. I've known of that the horse would go back in a burning barn where a mule wouldn't.
Yeah, that's right. That's they will sure go. They'll run back in. I know they done that year when the Wells Fargo burnt in that where they're keeping them. Some of them horses run back in there.
Do you remember when you was farming the kind of plows you used at first?
Yeah, sod plow.
Right, that was the plow up the sod to break it, break the sod.
Yeah.
And then later on, you had a walking plow. Of course, that was a sod plow too. And then you had a regular walking plow moldboard, didn't you, for a while? And then you finally got a riding plow.
Oh yeah. we got Dad finally bought a 2-bottom riding plow, King one. I can remember the name of it.
Yes.
Boy, we thought we
Kind of uptown then, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Did you ever use a disc plow when it got too dry?
Yeah. We had a disc plow. Great.
And then you used to list to put in your different row crops.
Yeah. You got a harrow. We had a 2-section harrow. Pretty good. You need them pretty well, but you can't. In this western country, when we come here and they had them dry years, you couldn't. You wouldn't want to harrow too much, or you'd blow away.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the things that when they had so much of it, there's kind of dust bowl problem too, along with the drought, didn't it not? You remember the Dust Bowl real well.
Yeah, I remember that well.
Can you tell any stories about that you remember?
Oh yeah, I just have to kind of study about this. There was a lot of people
There was
a lot of people that well, I did have some pictures of the Dust Bowl. And you know, you had a guy, Woody Guthrie. You remember him?
I remember.
He used to come here to eat.
Yeah.
I've had him in my barber shop now. And
he was quite a singer at one time and composed a lot of songs too, didn't he?
Over 1,000 songs about the Dust Bowl.
Right. Yeah.
And there was a fella, I think he was mayor one time down there at Okima. That's where Woody lived. And of course, he didn't stay at home. He was a rambler.
He had a lot of stories he wanted to tell, and he told them in song, didn't he?
That he did.
He did.
He told them in a song.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way.
He was a wonderful guy, but this druggist hated him for some reason or another. I think, you see, when Woody was this baby probably, this kid, his dad was kind of in politics. I think he was county clerk or something down there. I wouldn't know what it was. And of course he didn't live long after Woody was born. And Woody, what he was, he sympathized with the people. And if you sympathize with the people back there, they'd call you a communist a lot of times. And they branded Woody as a communist. Woody didn't think nothing of it.
Yeah.
But this old guy, I forget his name, but he was, of course, Woody was sick all his life. You know that, didn't you? And that, his wife said, I hear her say, one time after his dad, said that she didn't know that they separated, you see. They got one boy that sings around. And she said that if she'd have known the disease that he had, they'd never separate. She didn't understand.
Yeah, she didn't know it at the time. Yeah. When did you start in the barbering trade?
I started in 19, and I know 1915 when I started in shop here.
In Enid.
But you see, I done barbering before I ever went to college, and then I went to Swartz Barber College at Oklahoma City. Probably you heard of it.
I've heard of it.
And I taken the course there, and I always kind of counted that, and that was 1950.
1950. Then shortly after that, you started your in barber shop here.
Yeah. Well, I've owned, you might think I might be a rambler. I think I've owned 9 barber shops. But this last one, I was in it 46 years.
When you were there on Main between Grand and 2nd Street, weren't you?
Yeah.
At one time, down in the basement there.
Yeah.
I remember that. As a first, I remember that.
I remember the name of the people that own them buildings. You see, it's all a bunch of wooden buildings. Oslagers.
Yes, I remember that name too.
Do you name?
I remember.
There's 2 of them girls worked at
the court office.
Yeah.
The courthouse. I remember for a number of years.
Yeah.
Maida was one of them.
Yeah,
and
that's right. I got you know.
I remember. Then I remember. Then you moved on South Grand.
Yeah.
Afterward, that's where you was south of Doc McKay's drugstore.
Yeah.
And you were there how many years?
Well, you see, I'd previously been in the back end of Doc's, before Doc was there. And I sold that out. There's one of them places back behind, like, I just opened it up. Well, what it had, the news had published the in the morning news, or one of the, I don't remember which one it was. I think it was in the morning news. And that was where they had the
offices there?
No, they had the machinery.
Oh, the printing presses.
Yeah.
Such as that.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Enid events?
Yeah. I remember. Somebody tell me his name.
Everett Purcell.
Everett Purcell, yeah.
Yeah, that's for.
He was some guy, wasn't he?
Yep, so I remember all that too. Back in those days.
He run that and he put anything in there he wanted to.
Right, and it was a very newsy newspaper. You could get the story of the whole county,
Yeah.
of the people in the county. I remember that. You remember Thomas V. Hopley?
Do I remember it?
I'm sure you do.
Now I could tell a story on him. You see, Thomas V. Hopley of Ohio, that's where he was from. And when he told me when his father died, one of the pallbearers, the president, had been. Now that was.
Was that Taft?
No. Let's see. Warren G. Harding
Warren Hardy
of Ohio.
was one of the
That
pallbearers.
was before he was president.
Mm-hmm.
He was United States Senator.
Yes.
And Tom told me about it. And say, Tom didn't lie.
No.
He was just one of them old hard down guys that if he wanted you
He told it like it was.
told it like it was.
He had a little printing office on East Main, right east of the track here, about where Bank Lumber Company is in there now.
Yeah.
I remember that too. This was quite a time at that time. The streets along there on Main, and a lot of them were paved with brick at that time, weren't they?
Say old Tom, yeah, Tom never would tie his shoes. Shoestring.
Yeah.
But he was a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
Let's see. Tom. I was going to tell that. At that time, I just right now I don't exactly remember all of it. I know his sister. I tell you what I had done. I used to be quite a Democrat. You probably knew that. And so I right then things was pretty rough. That was about the time that Warren Harding was president. You know, he was a big scandal in his administration. Well, old Tom, I put a sale bill on the Republicans, you know. Well, pretty tough one. That's all I think of, you know, that you get over in print. So let's see. Yeah. So I sent it down, a guy down there to get Tom printed. And here come him up. Said, Ben, he said, if I had something in there about Wickersham, Wickersham make them eat crow, or I can't remember, and just how it went. But that's what it is. It was in this bill, and he come up and he said, "Now Ben," he said, "I need this money." But he said, "If you leave this out of the Wickersham," his sister was, that is it, his sister was on that Wickersham committee.
Oh, yes.
You know, they were quite prominent in Ohio.
Oh, yes.
It wasn't like Tom was, yeah.
I know.
And he said, Benfield, let's leave this out. And I said, Tom, that's the way it's going in there, and if you don't want to print it, he said, I won't print it. So I went up and got somebody else.
Somebody else to print it.
Yeah.
Do you remember Adam S. Garrett?
Oh,
RJ lawyer?
Yeah. Yeah.
You remember where he lived, right east on Main, right north of where St. Mary's Hospital is now? About where that locomotive is sitting, or the drive,
yeah.
a walk went back into his house.
Yeah.
I remember, what if you remember him?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I knew him pretty well.
How many years were you in barbering altogether?
Well, I was, just like I tell you, I'd had 9 barbers.
From about 1915 on, till when did you retire?
About, when did I retired, well, let's see. Huh?
9 years ago.
Huh? Please tell me.
9 years ago.
Oh, about 9 years ago you retired.
Well, she can remember better than I can. Well, yeah.
That would have been about
I
76.
I know how long I was in that last time.
Mm-hmm.
See, I was in there about twice before,
Mm-hmm.
and not back in there. And that was, let's see, I was in there 46 years.
Do you remember how many barber shops there were in Enid about that time?
Well, if you wasn't on the square,
Bigger barber, just main barber shops around downtown area.
yeah. Yes, there was. I couldn't remember. I probably could sit down and it'd take me an hour to study it out.
Sure.
I know where there's all at. I can remember Beach. There used to be 3 or 4 barber shops from the corner there, where the furniture store is now, Fraser,
Yes.
up to the shoe store on Broadway. Well, there was, I don't know, there was 5 or 6 barber shops.
Do you remember when Frank Avery was in the blacksmith shop on East Randolph?
Oh, yeah, sure. I've shaved old Frank Avery a lot of times.
I wonder how many, do you remember how many blacksmith shops there were in pretty close to town, in the downtown area, that time?
Well, I have to study and I picked
Ed Thomas had one, didn't he?
Who?
Ed Thomas.
Oh, yeah, he had one, yeah.
And Jim McGill had a feed store on East Randolph.
Yeah, and then later Jim had a grocery store over on West, let's see, yeah, on, he had a grocery store along in there where, between where Blacks is.
Oh, yeah. On West Randolph.
Yeah, on West Randolph.
Remember Fred Luft?
Yeah, I went, yeah, he's a leather man.
He was an early day leather man. You remember Mr. F.W. Buttrey?
I had a barber shop in the back end of his store there. I guess I was the only man that ever had a barber shop on 2nd Street.
Right.
You know, that went in from Broadway into Butler's store there, you see. And then come in out on this
On the
back
side.
end,
Right.
yeah, on
Right.
2nd Street.
On 2nd Street there,
Well,
yeah.
I ran that from the old man that had a barber shop in there.
You remember Hawkins and Kelly had a grocery store?
Grocery store, yeah.
And later on it was just Frank Hawkins, I think, but first it was Hawkins and Kelly.
Yeah.
That was on East Randolph too, was it not?
Well,
Sir, how many days did it take you to get from Texas to Oklahoma? By wagon?
I'll tell you, I'd have to do a lot of studying on that to make it accurate.
Mm-hmm.
But it must have been, well, it must have been, we was kind of hurrying because Dad wanted to get in time to get in the run. Now that's what he done. You was asking me a while ago about he'd taken one of his horses out of taking the harness off of him, put a saddle on him, and then my uncle, he had a horse, one horse, and they got on and made the run.
Did both of them stake claims?
Yeah, got claims right together.
Where was your father's claim?
The claim was, well, there was this one town in that part of the country, and that's a Cloud Chief. And we was 9 miles east and south of Cloud Chief. 9 miles from Cloud Chief, and it's south and east.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in we was in kind of a unique place. The Washita River, it's one of the crookedest rivers I guess I ever had.
It is. It winds back and forth.
Yeah. Well, this Washita River would go down like this, and the Indians taking all the timber down and water. That's all they was looking for, water. And every Indian was allowed so much land, before the white man they got what he was left when they run in there. And they got all the wood and water. And this runs down in there, the Washita River, and then it comes back up here. In other words, we was in here, but we didn't have no wood and water on our place. And we could go almost any direction from our farm, and we'd run into Washita River. It's crooked there. And of course, when we went there, the only town in that whole country was Cloud Chief. It's a county seat. And then later on, Cordell stole it. Got it.
At the county seat.
Yeah, they always have a lot of battles over. And let's see. I'm just trying to think. No, I can't. I don't tell nothing unless it's in there. So the Bretts. John Brett was a corporal. Was a Court of Appeals judge, Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
Him and my brother went to school together at Cordell. And Tom Brett he's down there now. He's and the Bretts live right there with Dad. And my mother used to go up there, and Mrs. Brett come down there, and this, my gosh, said Mrs. Blansit, said, get up here and help me. We're going to have a big party tonight. That's them old lawyers, And my wife, when I got married, that's the first job she ever had. When we went to visit my mother. We lived at Paul's Valley at that time. When we went to visit her, Mrs. Brett said, "Oh, bring her along," said, "I want to," and I think she gave her $1. That's the first work she ever done that.
On the wagon trip to Oklahoma, what kind of food did you eat on the wagon trip?
Mostly bacon. That's salt bacon. That's the meat. And besides, you know, this uncle of mine, single, he got quite a bit of wild meat. Turkey. There were a lot of turkeys on that Washita River. Of course, it didn't last long.
Yeah. Where'd y'all sleep at night while you were traveling?
Well, us kids slept in the wagon mostly, and they hardly ever put the tents up like it rained.
Did you see your father make the run?
Did you see?
Did you see the run?
No, I didn't see the run. We was in at Cloud Chief. That's in the middle of the run. And my uncle told Dad, he said, let's take out, you take out one of the horses and we'll go make the run, you see. And I just don't know when they come back. It was probably next day. They had to stake these claims, you see. And like I tell you, is probably the furthest east than on that side of the river. It's the furthest east any white man had any land. All around us, no, not all around, three-way that Indians on north of us, south of us, and east of us.
What kind of house did your father build on the claim?
He did a half dugout.
Tell me about it. Did you help him build it?
Oh no, I was too little. I watched him. No, I can remember watching him.
Tell me about how he built the half dugout.
Well, you see, you got a bank here yourself of they dig back in that bank, and now that's and dirt floor, and then he builds it up. Oh, I guess that's it. Say it's about this deep dug down.
Yeah, about 3 feet.
Yeah, and then the rest of the way, it logs. You go down on the river and get some logs. He didn't have nothing to buy with, you see. And you get these logs, you put a log house up, about that high, you know, here or something like that. And it's you can't hardly beat it. The first school I ever went to was there in that district, and it was the same kind of built, just like we got.
What was the name of the school?
Well, they never did. Later on, they named it Hopewell.
What kind of furniture did you have inside the half dugout?
Well, We just, it was made, there was a sawmill come in, and Dad worked there, and they'd make benches. Do you know what slabs is?
What is it?
Slabs is the rough part of a
The log?
log that they saw off. They usually burn it or something, but you can take them and you can bore a hole in them and put pegs for legs, you see. Put 4 legs on there and you've got a bench with the sawed side up, you see.
The sawed side is up?
Yeah, the sawed.
Oh, the sawed side is up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other's round underneath, and that's the way the schoolhouse had all their made out of slabs.
How many students were in that school?
Huh?
How many students were in the school?
Oh, the unique thing about it, we had people in there that were 6 foot tall and a little old shaver like me about that high. And
Was it all 8 grades?
all in the same grade. It was all first grade, just like the old tall boy up here is 6 feet tall. He had learned his ABCs just like I was.
Tell me some more about the Indians in that area.
Well, the Indians, one of the Indians and Dad got into it, old Creeping Bear, and he got drunk and he grabbed hold of Dad, and Dad, of course, knocked him loose. And he was a big old guy, and he was a policeman. You see, about every other Indian was a policeman by the government, you see. There wasn't that many, but there was a lot of them. And Dad, he struck out the cards here. Got the sheriff, the new sheriff, I can remember his name, Neely Morrison. He got Neely Morrison, went down there and they fined him and taken his commission away from him, put him in jail overnight and turned him loose. And he never bought no more either.
How come so many Indians were police?
Well, they just to get, you know, they were wild, you know. You can't hardly believe what they was. And they just, them police, Indian police, they're supposed to keep order, more especially among the Indians.
Do you remember the Spanish-American War?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me what you remember of it, what you heard about it.
Well, I was thrilled about it. And every time I could get something to read about it, why, now you take, you know, right here, this is quite a place. France was a captain, you know, and a Rough Rider here.
Did you know him?
Oh yeah, yeah. I know they were one of them France and first ones.
Did France ever tell you about making the charge up San Juan Hill with Roosevelt and the Rough Riders?
Well, I've heard him tell some of them stories, but I either read it or they told me. Now, there were 5 or 6 of them French boys, but he come back, you know, and they made him governor. And he was first, the last territorial governor.
What kind of man was France? What was he like?
Oh, France was a likable man. He was he's in that Rough Riders, and they were pretty rough too. They got the name,
Yeah.
what they was, and they went up that you know, that hill, you know.
Yeah, San Juan Hill.
San Juan Hill, and they really done her too. And them Spaniards, they learned right there that them Yanks wasn't to be fooled with.
Ever hear any more stories about the Spanish-American War?
Oh, I heard a lot of them, but I'd have to study on them. I can't.
Did many boys from around your area go to the war?
Who?
Did many boys from around Cloud Chief go to the war?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they had to turn them down. They had so many.
Did they have a big parade when the boys left?
They did when they come back, but I don't remember.
Tell me about that parade when the boys came back.
They just hooped them up. It's kind of like American Legion and everything. They don't. The Spanish-American War, there were a lot of them there's a lot of them up a few years ago, but they're just about all gone now. I don't know where they are. Are they anymore?
Very few of them.
And, there were a lot of them here.
Winfield Scott was one, was he not?
Yeah, Winfield Scott was in the First World War too. You know, he was in the 40. What is it? What was it?
Later on, the 45th.
45th. That's what he was. He was head of the 45th.
Were there many saloons around Cloud Chief?
Oh yeah, there was 5 or 6 saloons. Every town had, when they sprung up, they all was overloaded with saloons. They used to say that Lawton had 100 saloons in it.
Did they all close at Statehood?
Yeah, they all closed. They Statehood, that's when that's when they closed.
What did they do with all the beer and whiskey at Statehood?
Do what?
What did they do with all the whiskey when the saloons closed?
Oh, well, they drank it up. But you talk about having a high yield old time. Now, my dad had a saloon there at Fort Cobb for a while. And they closed up. The statehood, that night of statehood. And then they drank that whiskey up, sold it to Indians and anything else. See, you wasn't there. You could let an Indian come in your place. You was responsible for him, if you did. Yeah, but you couldn't send him no whiskey. If, you know, that's all the time his territory, you see.
Do you remember Statehood Day?
Statehood Day?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Was there a big celebration?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that celebration.
Well, it was, I was down at Fort Cobb when well, they just all got drunk, just wanted to drink, because the last whiskey, think about they never get no more whiskey. They would got to where every kid knowed how to make something to drink in a little while, homebrew.
What was the name of your father's saloon?
What was it? Carinations Saloon. He said on that's what they called it. He said, all nations welcome except Carrier Nation. That's what the sign said.
Did you do any work in that saloon?
Oh yeah.
What'd you do in it?
Well, I just, I bottled whiskey and, we got it in the bars. Things like that, Dad. I never did. They never did have no trouble with me drinking, because I never did. I always got sick next day, and it wasn't worth it.
Where'd you get the whiskey from?
Oh, well, a wholesaler would come in there and sell it and then ship it in. After we got a railroad down there. See, our closest railroad, when we come there, was Chickasha. And we was, 50 miles from they would go up there to Minko and El Reno and Chickasha. It's quite a deal.
Yeah.
People at night, that is, what was it, the 7th? What do I keep in my mind?
No, what, November 16th,
Is that when it was?
1907?
Yeah, now, 1907.
Yeah.
That's where I get that 7. And I know you talk about being a drunk bunch of people. And them Indians got drunk too. Now, they had a way of doing Indian territory. They're pretty smart about selling them Indian whiskey. They would, if the Indians had enough money, which they drawed rations and got so much money every month. And them old boys, the gamblers, would take all of it they could. And then they'd sell them a barrel of whiskey, or keg it was, and they'd pay for it, and they'd go driving along here, and they'd have that back end gate out, and they'd turn up and start up this hill. That whiskey would roll out the back, and he'd just keep going, Of course, them Indians would come right in to get it. They were pretty nifty. Well, he just lost his whiskey, you see, that's all he did. He didn't know it.
Do you remember the Depression of 1907?
Oh yeah, that's
The bank panic?
Yeah, that was when Teddy Roosevelt was president.
Tell me about that bank panic.
Well, you could just get $5 or $6 is all you can get out of it a week. That's the bank. He just wouldn't let them go broke. He wouldn't let them get enough money out. Old Roosevelt was pretty nifty, and he just allowed them. I think it's about $6. Maybe some families bigger may let them more.
I'm going to ask a question which I shouldn't ask in front of your wife. Were there any houses in the area?
Yeah.
Where were they? Do you know what kind of house I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what kind of house you're talking about. Well, they had a red light district. That is, even Mountain View had one. A little old town just built up from nothing. And 4 or 5.
Was this in Cloud Chief?
No, well, I don't know so much about Cloud Chief, but I know Mountain View, every time I went to town, we drove right by through these.
What about Fort Cobb?
All Fort Cobb just had a couple of them, red light districts.
How'd the ladies dress?
The ladies,
Yeah.
oh, them was, they had some, I see them walk in the streets and things. They had on good clothes. They wasn't in rags. They was better than the ordinary people, or ordinary women, you know, but dressed better than they did. Yeah, and in Mountain View, they got in there so quick. They was living in tents. Yeah, well, the town there was about three or four towns. Tried to build, you see. When they heard that Rock Island they know there's building out of Anadarko on through there, and they know that had all the dirt work through Mountain View. They know where it's going to get, and that's what settled Mountain View. They had to build a mile over. They couldn't build over in Kiowa County. They couldn't get a title to that land. So they went over across the river, and that'd be in Washita County, which is not in the territory. You see, Kiowa hadn't come in yet, and so this over in across the river where we live, why they was well, them people there. I wouldn't. They were so damn mean. That's right. There was an outlaw through there called Bert Casey, and he'd always shooting them up around there. They had a saloon, one of the Blue Front saloon there in Mountain View, and they got into shooting scrape there one night. And, you know, you can't hardly believe what happened. These old boys are getting from the huge wind up the river there. It's down, shooting them up. You know, the cowboys had a lot of cattle up in there, and they got into shooting scrape with the city marshal and another or two. And this old boy, now everybody got shot, but nobody died. And you just won't believe that one of them fellas got shot right through there, come out over here and didn't kill him nor bind him either. How a man could do that? He used to come to see girl that was working for us, and I always looked at him after he was shot, and it just actually went. I don't see how they done it. And then there was the ending. They already shot him all to pieces almost, and he went in the cornfield. They tracked him down with blood and stuff and brought him in.
What caused the shootout?
Huh?
What caused that shootout?
Well, just cowboys hooked him up town, and the city marshal, there's nothing on there getting drunk.
When did that happen?
That happened about the turn of the century. And cowboys was pretty tough.
You ever work with any of the cowboys, the ranchers?
Oh yeah, I've worked with ranchers.
You ever know anyone that rode the old Chisholm Trail?
Sure.
Did they ever tell you stories about the trail?
Yeah, they told a lot of stories about it.
What stories did they tell you about the trail?
Well, they tell about the Indians, you know, that you see these Indians, they wanted Warhol, that's what they call the cattle, you know. And you'd have to give them a Warhol to go through. And if you didn't, why, you probably at night, of course, the cowboy, of a night, they had night herders, you see. And they'd slip in there and stampede them cattle. And those people going up the Chisholm Trail, why they know it's cheaper to give them a Warhol than it was to lose a lot of cattle. And the Indians, I've seen them. They come in with the cowboys and they wouldn't be associating with them, but they'd come in after the cowboys had come in town there at Cloud Chief. And of course the Indian, they're very careful. The slonekeeper was, because the government, if you let them Indian get drunk, they won't know where the cause of it, you know, where they got their whiskey. And I see Seeger, he was one.
Did you know him?
Yeah, we was pretty close to him.
Tell me about John Seeger. What kind of man was he?
Well, John Seeger is just a man to come in there. I don't know the history of the man, only I know he was an Indian age. And them Indians, most of them would do what he'd tell them to. And he was handled you like he put you in jail, you know. Get you put in jail if you wasn't careful. But they all liked him because he's the one that put out the rations, you see. That's blankets.
You ever visit that school down there, that Indian school?
Yeah.
How big was that school?
Well, it's been so long, I thought it was all a big school. But I went back down, I seen them building a building in one of them towns down there when I was a kid, in Weatherford. We went down in a wagon, and it's 2-story, and I thought it was one of the biggest buildings I'd ever seen, which it was, I guess. And I went, every time I went through Weatherford for 40 years and longer, I always looked at that building.
What building was that?
I don't know what it was now, it was a store.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, last time I was through there, it was on the north side of the street.
Mm-hmm.
It's still there. But that was a wonderful big building.
Mm-hmm.
I don't guess I'd ever seen a 2-story store.
What kind of personality did John Seeger have? What was he like?
Oh, he was, he must have been quite an influence on the Indians. He was just a big old double-fisted man. He wasn't so tall, but he was a big feller, I can remember that. And I remember there's a place there, just about half a mile from us, where they call the Rock Ford. That's where you cross Washita. And you crossed on Old Big Nose's land. And Knight was one of the Indians, he was one-eyed, and it's said that he got that put out at when Custer got killed, and probably did. The Cheyennes, they had it pretty rough in that battle. And so I can remember I was riding in the wagon with Dad, and we looked back, and old Seeger and Knight was following us. And you see that Knight had built him a big pasture around. What he had, all of his land was pasture, you see. They had never broke it out, broke out then. So they followed us and down till we got nearly to our house. Seeger rode up and told Dad, said, you ought to have to quit coming across here. But I don't know, in a few days as crossing again, letting the fence down.
How do they organize a cattle drive?
Well, you just started out, and you got to put a man in front, and the cowboys on the side, you know, and they'll probably 100 yards apart, and ready to any cattle try to get off of the line while they're running back, and they overnight. Now you got to, that's what's when you and them storms. That's when they had to watch them cattle. That'll stampede.
What do you do in a stampede?
Well, all you can do is just ride around, try to ride in front of them, and if your horse happens to show you, you're going sucker. That's all there to.
How do you stop a stampede?
That's the way they try to stop them.
About right in front of them?
Yeah, get in front of them and shoot a lot of times. and anything, and get them circling, you know, and they get them stopped.
How many men on a cattle drive?
Well, you got me there. I just don't know. They have a bunch of them.
Were you on a cattle drive?
Oh no, I ain't never. Only just small cattle drive. You see, when we come there, the whole thing was cattle, you know. All right, we drove. Say we was down on the Haley Ranch, and we drive them up, and we wanted to get the herd in this herd, you see. We'd drive them up to Cloud Chief, and say 10, 12 men. If we had pretty good herd, you see. And then sometimes somebody had to be ahead of a cattle drive, you know. You just didn't turn that over to anybody. And so now sometimes a man would say he had 1,000 head of cattle. Well, that's quite a few, but of course there's some herds that take all day now for them to get by. But about as big a herd as I ever helped on was about 400 or 500 head. We drove them up to Cloud Chief, and this guy come in with this herd, and then he takes charge of the cattle, and he's responsible for them, you know. And they take them, well, mostly they're taking them up. They finally got taken them to Caldwell, but first they were taking them to Dodge City, and even up to Wichita. You see, Wichita had railroads, and then you see them stock cattle, and that's one thing that they had the cowboy. Some of the cowboys had to go with the train, you see, and they'd have to get off, and go up and down the train, and they had sticks poke them cattle and get them up. If you get down, they'll tromp on another to death.
How many cattle per car?
Oh, I'll say, if I know now, it's I forget how long is it for?
I don't know exactly that. I would say there'd probably been somewhere 40, 60 head of cattle, I would say, in the car.
Well, they got the cattle over on this side and then around over on both sides, and they got a iron trough there that water them with. They water the water tank where the engine gets their water, you know, for your locomotive, and but these cowboys, they have to get out. They don't just sit back in the caboose now.
Yeah.
They have to get up there and make these cattle get up.
Yeah.
Did you butcher your own hogs? Did you butcher your own hogs and beef?
Oh yeah.
What time of year would you butcher?
Well, mostly hogs, they do that in the winter time. And beef, the way they done that mostly down in my country, they'd, you'd butcher a beef, and you'd take, you see, you had to know how to put that up, it'll spoil. They jerk it, you know, make jerky out of it, and you can hang it up, and it'll dry, you know.
How long did it take to dry it?
Well, I don't know. It don't take too long. It what it does, it's film gets over it, flies won't bother.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know the amount of time. I just been so long.
How'd you cure your hams?
We use the smokehouse,
Smokehouse?
and I'm telling you, them they, of course, the Midlands, they smoked a few of them, but mostly they use salt. Put it around, they make get them a big box and put salt down there, and then they'll put a middling salt. And do you know, I just don't know.
Put some brown sugar in with it sometimes too, don't they?
Yeah. And you know, I've wondered a lot of times. I worked in a store, and they had that meat stacked up like that, not in no refrigeration. And they'd come in, you know, and they'd say, how much you want? Oh, about this much. And cut her off, and throw it around,
Yeah.
and there's no refrigeration.
Yeah.
You can't put that, now it'll spoil.
That's right. They did a lot better way, had a lot better way of curing, and they took the time to do it at that time, didn't
Yeah, yeah, you had to know how to do them things, but it just, and there are a lot of people, they take hogs, a lot of people, them Midlands, they had them all summer. Get meat, buy meat from one another.
How much lard can you render from a good-sized hog?
Oh, you can, you mean, say about 300-pound hog?
Yeah.
You will get about, I would judge you get about 4 gallons. And they, now and they can keep that too. And now if you get that right, it'll be spoiled.
Did you make sausage?
Yeah, that's right.
What's your sausage recipe?
You what?
What's your sausage recipe?
Oh, well, the sausage, that's one of the best things they got. Is it's sage and pepper and what else or something? Huh?
Did you ever pack the sausage? You put the sausage down in lard to keep it?
Yeah. Yeah, you can put it down in lard and cover it over. Just put the lard over it and let it cool down till it covers every bit of it. And that'll keep for all time. Oh, I don't say not all time, but
Keeps a long time.
yeah, keep a long time.
Did you serve in the military?
No.
Did you know anyone that went down with General Pershing to chase Pancho Villa?
Yeah.
1916?
I had a brother.
You did? Did he tell you any stories about being on the border?
Oh yeah, he could tell you stories that And I guess there's a lot of them true.
What'd he tell you?
He told me about old Bill and perishing. Say old perishing. My brother, he was with. What was that guy before perishing? My brother is him, and then perishing. He died, this guy.
Yeah.
I forgot his name now. He was perishing was under him, and he died, and that's what promoted perishing. And he went World War One, and got to be the commander-in-chief of the old cheese over there.
Any particular stories your brother told you that you remember about the border?
Yeah, he told me once that they used to call Pershing blackjack Pershing, and he said there's a bunch of soldiers beat hell out of him, nigger soldiers. They had to fight, and Pershing just beat hell out of him, and they called him blackjack after that. I know that's what they called him because that's what his blackjack Pershing.
What made you decide to become a barber?
What made me decide to come? Well, true, I was a pretty good barber. Just I worked around, and learned. And we cut a man's hair and shaved. And then I went to Swartz Barber College, Oklahoma City.
What's the name of it?
Swartz, S-H, with a Z in it. Swartz.
When did you go there?
I guess I must have went there in 1915.
Was Mr. Schwartz head of it?
Yeah, Mr. Schwartz was a Dutchman.
What was he like?
Oh, he was just a little old Dutchman that was a nice feller. I can think of it now, but I was, I don't know. I was a smart little myself, you see. And Schwartz didn't allow that. You see, I've seen when he had 50 or 75 students, maybe 100. And you get that many people off the farm and out of the shops and one place and another, and put them all together. And you got to have a little. You got to do something to them, or they're tired of
You have to have a little control, don't you?
Yeah, they're get control of the whole joint. Yeah.
So, where was your first barber shop?
The first barber shop I owned in Paul's Valley.
15, 16?
Let's see. I went from. That's where I went from. I had a brother-in-law down there at Paul's Valley, with a barber, and I went down there and went to work for him. And then I bought the shop. And I'm just trying to think. What was that great lawyer, criminal lawyer?
Rennie?
Who?
Rennie?
No. This is,
I think it was Tom Pratt. I think it was Tom Pratt. Wait. Tom Pratt.
no, it wasn't Tom.
Was it Garvin?
Huh?
Sam Garvin?
No. He was penitentiary. They used to tell you learned in a penitentiary. Mormon Pruitt.
Oh, Pruitt?
Yeah. Well, I bought the barber shop. He had his walls in it, this frame building there. And one thing about it, Mormon Pruitt, when I got up here, every time he'd come up there, he'd come up and see me. He never forgets you. And he drank a lot of whiskey. And he'd kill you this minute if you had to. Yeah, he was really tough.
Were there many bootleggers around Paul's Valley?
Huh?
Are there many bootleggers around Paul's Valley?
What you mean? There used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you see, there was an Indian territory, and then there was Oklahoma territory. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma territory, Indian territory, never had no saloons in them. Mm. And no, they never did. In Oklahoma territory, they had saloons when there's long before Statehood. But the first saloons, I guess to tell you the truth of it, it come in statehood, they never had no saloons.
Yeah.
They had buying tigers, they call them.
Oh, had what?
Buying tigers.
What's that?
Well, you'd walk in and put it down a dollar, whatever you want, whiskey, and turn around and here's your whiskey. No, you'd never see nobody. But you'd pay for it, or you'd just put the money down in this outfit. And they call them blind tiger. And that's, there was. You didn't know who sold you the whiskey.
Where were the blind tigers?
Huh?
What kind of store had the blind tiger?
Well, he was just, mostly didn't have nothing in front. Sometimes they had sold saddles or things like that, but it was just like you'd have a post office in the back of a store, you see. It's going.
Were a lot of them close to hotels too?
Yeah, them hotels. Yeah, there's some of them blind tigers in the hotel.
You ever go to Lexington?
Oh yeah.
Ever see the Last Chance Saloon?
Yeah.
You familiar with it?
I lived there for sale.
You did?
Yeah.
I've heard that saloon was in the middle of the river.
Yeah.
You ever go there?
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Well, you see, what they done, you see, the saloon, Lexington could have saloons. Purcell was in the old Indian territory. They never had saloons. And so the most noted saloon there was built on that sandbar down there. Every time it come
rain?
Yeah, it'd wash it away, but they'd put it back. And then, I don't know, they was, I just don't know how many saloons there was in Lexington. There was a bunch of them.
What did the inside of that saloon look like?
Well, it would be the bar up about this high, you know. And you had a whiskey back of him here, and he'd buy it. Sometimes if they'd have to go to a keg and draw the bottle of whiskey. Tell him how much you want. He'd run this water out of this whiskey and give it to you. And they, well, it was, some had a nice mirror, but not very many of them. Most of the bars were just a bar, right? And you had back there, you had this whiskey sitting back there. You couldn't have you wouldn't dare to have it like you have a grocery store and have go along, somebody fill up your wagon.
Did they have bar stools or chairs in the bar?
Huh?
Did they have stools or chairs inside the bar?
Well, some, not very many. The old-time bar. I've seen a lot of whiskey stores before I ever seen one with a stool in it. They come in later.
Who ran that Last Chance Saloon? What was his name?
You know, I just don't remember now. I can't remember. Last Chance. Well, they had them all over the country. They had the first chance and the last chance. Yeah, you're driving along with your wagon, and you get out the last chance. You say, well, I believe I'll get me a pint of whiskey before Last Chance Saloon now.
Yeah, I have a photograph of that bar on the sandbar, and it's called the Last Chance Saloon there at Lexington.
Yeah, well, that's what I guess they pulled that. I'm not sure, but I kind of think that they pulled that out and made a kind of what do you call it?
Museum?
Museum out of it.
When did you return to Enid?
When did I return to Enid? I returned to Enid 3 or 4 times. My wife's folks lived at Palo Valley, and she'd get restless, so I would go down there and stay a little while.